The man lying inside the hibernation pod was suddenly awakened by a harsh alarm. Before he could even figure out what was happening, his body was quickly covered by a spacesuit made of nanotechnology. Then, after a violent shake, the hibernation pod was instantly launched into space. Looking out through the window, Jeff finally saw what was going on. The spaceship had been hit by a meteor, causing severe damage. Jeff saw other hibernation pods, just like his, flying toward the nearest planet along different trajectories. But because the temperature outside was far too high, most of the pods exploded during the high-speed flight, turning into bursts of blinding fire. Luckily, Jeff's pod was still functioning normally. He successfully broke through the atmosphere and made it to the nearby planet. But the extreme heat had already damaged the pod, so during landing, the AI could no longer control it. A few seconds later, the hibernation pod began rolling out of control. Seeing that he was only a few hundred meters from the ground, Jeff could do nothing but open his mouth in terror and wait for death to come. But the explosion he expected never happened. He quickly looked outside through the window. All he saw was flying sand, scattered rocks, and dark clouds everywhere. The entire planet was filled with a lifeless, dead silence. Jeff immediately tried calling for help through the radio, but no matter how long he called out, there was no response at all. And right at that moment, the pod rolled again. Then the system warned him that the damaged hull could explode at any time. With no other choice, Jeff had to get out fast. But when he pulled the switch, he realized the hatch was already damaged and wouldn't open at all. In a panic, Jeff noticed a clear crack in the glass. So he quickly grabbed the fire extinguisher beside him and smashed the glass with all his strength. After repeated blows, the glass finally shattered. But just as he was about to crawl out, the pod rolled once again. On his way out, his spacesuit was accidentally cut open. Now oxygen was leaking non-stop from the tear in his abdomen area. In just a short moment, his oxygen dropped to only 42%. Jeff hurriedly found a repair sealant and sprayed it over the damaged area to patch it up. But even after fixing it, he had already lost half of his oxygen. At that moment, the escape pod's engine started smoking. Terrified, Jeff quickly squeezed out through the gap, but before he could even think about how to call for help, he saw the spaceship he had been riding in burst through the clouds in flames and crash at the far edge of his sight. A powerful shockwave rushed toward him and threw him to the ground. Fortunately, Jeff was far enough away and wasn't hurt. But now, with no hope of rescue, he knew he could only save himself. Just as Jeff had no idea what to do next, he suddenly noticed a place in the distance where a light kept flashing. With nowhere else to go, Jeff decided to head toward the light, hoping he might find some chance of survival there. On the way, Jeff accidentally passed by a crashed hibernation pod, but to his disappointment, that pod had already completely fallen apart. He tried to look for any oxygen equipment he could use, only to find that everything was already destroyed. It seemed his only hope now was still that flashing light in the distance, so he continued moving toward it. What Jeff didn't notice, however, was that there was also a strange claw mark on the pod beside him.